There is a light at the end of this road, and I know that there's still a long way to go. As long as my head is high and I walk with pride, go with the strength inside, take every step in stride. No chance will pass me by, long as I always try, won't let my passions die. And as long as I'm alive, the future belongs to me. Oh, the future belongs to me, and it's gonna be a beautiful thing to see. When the history has been written and the glory days are gone, how will you be remembered? What page will you be on? Will you be someone they reference with wise words to quote? A paragraph, a page, a chapter, more than a footnote. As simple as the questions asked, the answer I propose is to look beyond the days gone past. To see tomorrow knows that the future belongs to me. Oh, the future belongs to me, and it's gonna be a beautiful thing to see. A beautiful thing to see. Such a beautiful thing to see. It's gonna be such a beautiful thing to see. Future belongs to me. The future, the future. The future, the future. The future, the future. Future, the future belongs to me. Future, the future. Future, the future belongs to me.
Welcome, teachers. We are so happy that you're joining us this evening from all over the state. I'm Christy Norris. I'm the director of Carolina K-12 at UNC Chapel Hill. My wonderful colleague Paul Benici is behind the scenes as you come in and get settled. If you have any technical difficulties whatsoever, he's there to assist you. And we are thrilled to be here with you for My NC A to Z, a conversation with Michelle Lanier about North Carolina's rich African American history, heritage, and culture. And we are also here to celebrate every single one of you. If you know me, you know I can't miss an opportunity to say to the North Carolina teachers with us this evening how much we deeply appreciate you and value you as some of the most important professionals in this state. And we know you are tired. We know you're burned out, you're Zoom fatigued, you're pandemic fatigued. You see that holiday break right on the horizon. And so we do not take lightly the fact that you've chosen to spend another hour online with us this evening. And so from the bottom of our hearts, thank you, thank you, thank you for your service in the classroom. So a quick note about your hosts and sponsors tonight. Carolina K-12 is a program, as I said, of UNC Chapel Hill of Carolina Public Humanities. And in line with what I just shared, we at Carolina K-12 are adamant that teachers need and deserve time and space to think as scholars, to reflect as professional practitioners. And so we are dedicated to supporting teachers with free, high-quality professional development and curriculum. We hope you'll visit us at carolinak12.org to learn about other programs we have coming up, as well as to visit our database of hundreds of quality classroom resources, many of which actually connect to the various people and topic and places that are in the book that we'll be discussing tonight. Our partners in this program include the North Carolina Museum of History, which is located in downtown Raleigh, and who offers more than 150,000 artifacts from 6 centuries of North Carolina history. And they are open with safety precautions in place if you can visit. And if you can't, they offer some fantastic online programming, lots of resources online for teachers. And so make sure you visit them at www.ncmuseumofhistory.org. And Carolina K-12 and the North Carolina Museum of History are incredibly grateful to the Braitmayer Foundation, who is one of the sponsors of this evening's event. Thank you also to our partners at the African American Heritage Commission, which was created by the General Assembly in 2008 and works across the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources to achieve the mission of preserving, protecting, and promoting North Carolina's African American history, art, and culture for all people. The Commission, along with the North Carolina Office of Archives and History, are the publishers of my NCA to Z. And do check out the Commission's website. They have some really incredible projects that are so relevant and informative for the K-12 classroom. So make sure you visit and see all of what they have to offer. And lastly, we're so appreciative of the support of the North Caroliniana Society, who along with Braitmayer is making it possible for us to purchase a copy for every single one of you joining us tonight, over 100, well over 100 of you, a copy of this beautiful book that we're going to be talking about. And the Society is dedicated to the promotion and increased knowledge and appreciation of North Carolina's history and heritage. So it makes sense why we were all fast friends. Unlike us, the Society understands the importance of teachers as professionals and lifelong learners and scholars themselves, that you guys deserve and need the time and space for quality lifelong learning. And that, of course, includes free resources like this amazing book. And so on that note, at the end of this program, Paul will put a link into the chat box that you'll fill out with your address. And then in a few weeks, likely post-holidays, you'll get your book in the mail, because all of us who I've just talked about love you, and all of us love this book, and we feel 100% sure that you are going to love this book too. So on that note, a little bit about this beautiful book. My NC from A to Z, it's a colorful, inspirational, stunning board book that celebrates North Carolina's rich, rich history and heritage. It highlights some of the most important and incredible heroes and sheroes and leaders of our state, and it definitely captures the important qualities of resistance, resilience, hope, and strength of the African American history here in North Carolina. And as I mentioned earlier, it's published by the North Carolina African American Heritage Commission and the North Carolina Office of Archives and History. It's illustrated by the incredible Dare Coulter and written by the amazing Michelle Lanier, who we are absolutely honored to have here with us this evening. And so I'm going to invite our star, Michelle Lanier, on to join us.
Greetings. It's so good to be here with you and to be with everyone. Oh, I just want to say hello to all the educators who are here. I know I can't see your faces, but I can feel your hearts. So hello. Thank you.
Good crowd, including my 8-year-old's teacher is out there. Hi, Miss Daniels. You guys, you don't know what she deals with, let me tell you. But Michelle, we are thrilled to have you. Thank you for being here. As I said to you earlier, everybody should know I consider Michelle Lanier North Carolina royalty. So this is such a treat. She agreed to do this, even though she is one of the busiest people I know, because she so respects and appreciates teachers too. So I want to tell these folks a little bit about you, and then I know you'll tell them a little bit about yourself too, because I mean, the things you have done, where you found time to do this, I don't know, but Michelle is a scholar, an oral historian, a filmmaker, a museum professional, and a folklorist. Her deep roots, what she calls Afro-Carolina, inspired her to successfully advocate for legislation to create the North Carolina African American Heritage Commission, one of the co-publishers of this book, and she actually led it as its founding executive director. She is a seasoned humanities professional. In 2018, she became the first African-American director of North Carolina's 25 state-owned historic sites. And she also has a passion for teaching, particularly at the Center for Documentary Studies at Duke University, where she served as faculty member for 2 decades. She's also the very proud mother of Eden, which is such a beautiful name. And again, despite her busy schedule, as soon as I asked her about doing something for teachers, she immediately said yes. So again, Michelle, thank you. And I just want to jump right in because these teachers, they're teachers, so you know they ask great questions, right?
Absolutely.
So to get us started tonight, Anne from Wake County is wondering, where did the idea come from for this book? So if you could maybe start just by telling us what inspired you and how did this project come to be from start to finish?
Yeah, so like many visions, there were multiple ingredients that came together. Um, First, I have to honor my people. You know, I am the daughter of Margaret. I am the granddaughter of Anne Grace. Margaret was born in Fayetteville. Anne Grace was born in Goldsboro.
A lot of Fayetteville in the house, a lot of Cumberland County.
Yes, my mother was born on base at Fort Bragg, and her mother was born in Goldsboro, distantly related to the Scott's barbecue family of Goldsboro. And then her mother was born also in Goldsboro. Her name was Odell, and her mother was Annabelle, and she was born in Smithfield in Johnston County. And then I have paternal heritage in Wake County, definitely Raleigh, a little unincorporated community called McCullers Crossroads, which is near Zebulon, and up near Granville County, Lewisburg. So my roots are here. I was raised in Columbia, South Carolina, and my upbringing was in what we call an oasis space of Black heritage and uplift and brilliance in a little historic space called Waverly, which is in Columbia, South Carolina. And there are 2 historically Black colleges and universities there, Allen and Benedict. And so I was surrounded by these stories. My grandmother's kitchen table was a place of learning. I remember my grandmother walking me to preschool. I remember the fact that my grandmother was always a ravenous bibliophile. She loved books. There was not a time I can remember not having books around me. My mother was an educator. At one point, an assistant principal and then a principal. Her sister was an educator. She taught middle school, then became an assistant principal, then a principal, and then a deputy superintendent of a school district. Her son is a superintendent of a school district. I have also a great grandmother who went to Fayetteville, what is now Fayetteville State University, when it was a normal school, and she taught. We had relatives who taught in one-room schools. And so I come from educators. I too am an educator. I do teach at Duke University, but I also spent many years teaching little ones. I have, in another life, I taught Montessori and really focused on those ages 3 to 5. And I also led a Montessori-based Sunday school. I'm a practicing Episcopalian, and we had a Montessori-based Sunday school experience. And again, that age of 3 to 5. I am in love with human development and growth. And I believe that we're always on a journey of becoming more fully who we are. And one of the things I love about the Montessori philosophy is that there's this concept that every 3 years you kind of make another leap. And so when I deal with my college students, I see them as these developing people who are emerging into adulthood. You know, their frontal lobe hasn't even attached yet, but they feel very grown. And so I love being with people who are on the brink of something. And I also teach continuing education. So I sometimes will teach an elder. I've had 80-year-old students who are on the brink of something. You know, they're trying to redefine themselves or discover a new passion. And so for me, that begins with that 3 to 5-year-old space. I remember my own daughter, Eden, at the age of 4, and all of those synapses developing. I remember how quickly, you know, words were coming, but not so much on tying the shoes. We had those shoes for a long time. I remember how Eden really struggled to write the capital letter N. It was something about that diagonal that was tough, but yet other things came easier. And so learning, development, growth is something that's so important to me. I also remember being little and watching my daughter be little and being among primarily white students, and even as early as 3 and 4, wondering out loud, why don't I look like them? Why is my skin brown? Why doesn't my hair do what their hair does? And recognizing that shift from daycare to preschool was a little tough for me and my daughter, because we were not seeing images that reflected us. And I could even see, as someone who worked with that age group, that my children of color in the classroom, when it came time to take a nap, they stayed down longer. It's almost like they needed more rest. Their brains, I think, were tired from trying to translate all of these cultural messages. And so I have a tenderness around children who come from Black and Indigenous and Asian and Latinx communities, and children who are otherly abled, who are living with disabilities, who are just trying to understand, why do I feel so different? And why do these systems not seem to be built for me? And it's because we all know we are in a national and international moment where we are being called to reflect upon representation, and how for generations it's been a fight to centralize the stories and the voices and the gifts and the communities that have been marginalized. And so for me, something as simple as a baby book is one of my contributions to this effort, because I remember, you know, I divorced when my daughter was young. And I remember driving around as a single mother, and one of my go-to, you know, strategies would be driving with one hand and reaching behind me for that go bag and handing my daughter a board book. And I was so grateful that they were board books, sturdy, with, you know, not paper that could tear easily, that I could wipe off with water if we got snacks, applesauce or whatever, stickiness on there. I needed something that would engage my daughter, support her, affirm her, but also make sense for the practical realities of being a single mom trying to give to the state of North Carolina. And then I remember being in a meeting one day and I was bored. And I don't know, I mean, I'm sure if we could see faces, but show of hands, we've all been in meetings where we've been bored.
Teachers, board and staff meetings?
Right.
I can imagine going over those test scores. That's exciting.
Oh, God. And so I remember thinking, oh, I have got to be respectful. Like, I need to stay alert. I can't fall asleep. You know, I have to stay focused. And so I gave myself a little game. And this is something I would do often if I felt like, oh, this part of the meeting is just not about me, but I need to look engaged. Sometimes I would write haiku, you know, and try to write little 575 haiku poems. But for on this particular day, I said, I'm going to write the letters A through Z, and I'm going to challenge myself. After all these years of working in African American heritage, can I come up with a person, a place, or a story that connects to every single letter in the alphabet? Let me just see. And then that grew to me saying, this could be a project or a program or a something. Fast forward, I met Dare Coulter, and I saw her amazing mural in Raleigh. First, I saw her art and how vibrant and dynamic and filled with the spirit of humanity and diversity and love and color. And then I met Dare, who is like a fairy, just bouncy and, you know, from just another planet in the most beautiful way. And I said, Dare, there's a project that I want to work on. And I was about to make the transition from the African American Heritage Commission to historic sites. And this was like my farewell project. So much so that I don't receive funds from this. All the funding from this project goes back to support the work of the African American Heritage Commission and their dreams around publishing even more books. And the commission, I should say, is being beautifully led by the Angela Thorpe, who is the director. And I'm so excited for all of the amazing work that Angela's doing. And so it all came together with a lot of labor. The book sold out the first time and we had to get a reprint. So it really does come from my grandmother, all of the uncles and grandfathers in my life, and a little bit of boredom, and also a little bit of what do I wish that I had had as a 4-year-old in my hands?
Yes.
And what do I wish I had had in my hands as a single mom, wanting to affirm my daughter who wanted to know why her skin was brown.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think it's interesting. It's a board book, but as I said to you earlier when we were chatting, this could be a coffee table book. I mean, it is, you know, I think while the reading level, you know, it's obviously an alphabet book, this is for middle school. This is for high school. This is for adults, because it is really a book of art and soul and power. It's just really so beautiful. And you know, one of the things, it's funny because Jody from Wilkes County asked, what kind of research did you do for this book? Well, I think you are who you are, so you probably didn't have to, I don't know if you had to do any research.
Oh, I did. No,
yeah,
I take research.
I feel like you know so much.
Yeah, thank you. So I think there's several layers of research that went into this. I'm grateful for the research question. This is all based on primary sources and layers of research. So some of the research was accumulation or aggregation of trying to tell people, first of all, why did we need an African American Heritage Commission in North Carolina? And when I would say to people, we have the most Rosenwald schools historically of any state in the nation. And then people will go, what's a Rosenwald school? So there was a teachable moment. We had the most 4-year HBCUs of any state in the nation. We are the birthplace of multiple sit-in stories, civil rights stories. Polly Murray, who is this human rights champion who lived multiple lives, was a poet, a first African-American woman ordained as an Episcopal priest, helped Ghana, West Africa, to create its constitution, first African-American to get a doctorate in law at Yale, and now there's a college at Yale University named for Pauli Murray, made international news trying to, integrate UNC, was, on and on and on, founder of National Organization of Women. That's one person. So all of these people, musicians, visual artists, people like Nina Simone and Thelonious Monk and John Coltrane, the United States Color Troops, who were born in North Carolina but fought for the Union, helps us to tell a more complicated story of the Civil War. And so when I would tell people these stories, oftentimes at the Museum of History, at the African American Cultural Celebration, and people's eyes would get so big, and I would watch them go through a roller coaster ride of emotion of, oh, I feel shame. I didn't know that. I feel inspired. I want to know more. I feel excited. I feel surprised. I feel hopeful. And often, if this was an older person who I was talking to, there would then be this statement of, I wish I had known this earlier. I learned more in these 10 minutes of talking to you than I did in my entire 12 years of, public education about Blackness in North Carolina. And so for me, starting with little ones means if you put a book in the hand of a baby, you put a book in the hand of a family.
Yeah.
And you put a book in the hand of a family, you put a book in the hand of a community.
Yeah.
And so I wanted there to be a moment where people would say, I don't know this. I don't know these names. And so we could say, that's good. Let's acknowledge that.
Yeah.
But the research also was, so it was cumulative. But then as I started digging in, I would go back, I would fact check, I would find sources. And then when DARE came on board, DARE culture was not raised in North Carolina. DARE is not a historian or a folklorist or a museum professional. So I literally had to take DARE through an intensive course on every single story, the appropriate attire, the appropriate background, the appropriate, why is this person important? And so we had a mini course for DARE, and then we would tweak and check. Sometimes I would go and take an image that DARE had done, a sketch, and show it to a specialist and say, did we get the hair right? Is this clothing attire appropriate for this time period? So we also brought in specialists. And then the next layer, everyone who registered for this event got a link to a companion guide for the book that goes through our state library system. And it's called A Companion Guide to Mayan-C A to Z. There were another set of researchers who worked on all of those entries. So the research keeps growing. It's really interesting.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think I want you to know you're getting a lot of love here. I think it's important. Heather said after spending her K-12 life in primarily white institutions, her daughter is loving her HBCU experience. And I think it's amazing. The image, I know what you guys saw in the beginning, there it is. That's just, to see that and to celebrate that is really, really incredible.
Yes.
Yeah, Sarah.
I'm a child of HBCUs. I have a ton of relatives that went to Shaw University. I mentioned Fayetteville State. I had relatives that went to St. Aug. I had relatives that went to North Carolina Central, A&T. I went to Spelman College, an HBCU in Georgia. My parents met at an HBCU in Pennsylvania at Lincoln. So we are an HBCU pride family. My husband went to Alabama A&M. And so
Fayetteville State in the house, I see Maria's saying.
I should call out Livingstone. Cottrell is one that a lot of people don't know about that's an extant HBCU. Barbara Scotia, Johnson.
Some Howard in the house, some Elizabeth State University, some Vikings. All right.
Elizabeth City State University, Winston-Salem State University, Bennett College, my other sister's school. So yes, those are really important. And Howard is having a huge moment. I mentioned Spelman, where I went, is where the alma mater. I just got this mug in the mail. S is for Stacy.
Stacy, your friend.
So that's from my cousin. And then for my Howard person on, that's K is for Kamala, our vice president elect, Madam Vice President.
Awesome. Yes. And you should know too, I love you. We got so many comments like this, even in the pre-registration. Sarah from Orange County says her 18-month-old is absolutely in love with this book. And Sarah said, as a teacher, I just want to hear so much about all the different letters and the history behind it. So I'm going to pose perhaps a very hard question to you.
Sure.
Can you talk about a few of your favorite entries?
Sure. No, that's not hard. That's not hard.
For me, it would be like A to Z, every single one.
No, but we were very deliberate with A to make sure that we were capturing a message of gender balance immediately. We wanted from the beginning to say this, we're going to be gender balanced. And so we have Anna Julia Cooper and Abraham Galloway, and Anna Julia Cooper was born enslaved in Raleigh, North Carolina, and over the course of her life, she becomes one of the founding mothers of Black feminist thought. She writes a book. She calls herself Black in the 1800s. She goes on to be an educator, just like you all, in Washington, D.C. And even when she was little, she was already advanced. Coming up out of slavery at St. Aug, she was tapped to be a tutor for the older students because she was advanced, and she advocated for herself to be able to take math, high-level math, and classical language like Greek and Latin because she wanted to take the gentleman's course. That was what it was called. She also persevered, and in her 60s, earned her doctorate degree from the Sorbonne in Paris, France. So she went from slavery to the Sorbonne. Abraham Galloway was also born in slavery, escaped by boat, a turpentine carrying vessel. So you can imagine the fumes. He talks about coughing up, all of these fumes while he was in hiding on this boat to get away. Ends up in Ohio right around the time of a lot of activism in the Oberlin area in Ohio, comes back south during the Civil War, and he becomes a spy. He ends up crossing across Confederate and Union lines and trying to, understand how to kind of work the military system in that moment, recruits United States colored troops, and ends up becoming one of the first Black legislators in North Carolina history. He's a senator. In the 1800s, we had over 125 Black men who served in some people call the old state capitol, which falls under me as one of our state historic sites. So A is lovely. We talked about H. I do have to shout out another one of our historic sites, which is the Charlotte Hawkins Brown Museum. Dr. Charlotte Hawkins Brown was considered one of the 3 B's of Black education. She, at the age of 19, created a school that became internationally renowned. The Emperor Haile Selassie of Ethiopia sent his nephew to be educated in Sedalia, North Carolina, just outside of Greensboro, at the Palmer Memorial Institute, which Dr. Brown started when she was 19 with just a blacksmith shop and a church, and she grew it and grew it and grew it. People like Josephine Baker and Langston Hughes and Eleanor Roosevelt and Nat King Cole would just be there as guests very regularly. It is a museum, and I would love for you all it's open. Go visit the Charlotte Hawkins Brown Museum. I love this one. It's for Freedom Hill.
Freedom Hill.
I just love the story of Princeville, North Carolina, the oldest incorporated Black town in the country. The oldest incorporated Black town in the country. It has been impacted by flooding, particularly Hurricane Floyd and Florence, and many other hurricanes have impacted Princeville, North Carolina, in Edgecombe County, which sits on the Tar River. There were Union soldiers camped out on that river during the Civil War. Word spread through the enslaved communities in North Carolina and as far as Virginia, and people risked their lives. They could have been killed seeking freedom behind Union lines. And they created a tent city, a refugee camp, and then built a shanty town out of reclaimed wood, and then created a settlement. It was called Freedom Hill during the Civil War period, and then went on to be incorporated as Princeville in honor of Turner Prince, who was an artisan, and they wanted to honor him. And then I'll just end with, there's so many more. I love S's for songs. I encourage you to look at that.
Don't end, keep going, keep going.
Okay. Well, I'll do S's for songs. I mean, it's just.
While you're finding that, I do want to say Esther said she was thrilled to be able to visit Palmer Memorial and see a brief documentary of attendees in 2019. She loved learning about Charlotte Hawkins Brown. It deeply inspired her. So
thank you. Please come back. Yes, come back. Be a return visitor and bring friends.
Yeah.
So S is for song. If you are familiar with the painting, The Sugar Shack, by Ernie Barnes, that ends up at the end of Good Times, the sitcom. You'll often see this painting of Sugar Shack, of people dancing and moving in these very sensual ways at a party. And it's also on the cover of a Marvin Gaye album. So Ernie Barnes is from North Carolina. He's from Durham. The Sugar Shack was a place. It was the Durham Armory, which still stands in downtown Durham. And it was a party that he snuck into as a young teenager. And there, in fact, when you look at the painting, you'll see an elderly gentleman who's kind of like out of place and hunched over sleeping. This was a deacon from his church who was just kind of watching everything and being almost like a chaperone. And he put young Ernie Barnes in his eyesight so that he could keep an eye on this young man. And this young teenage African-American boy from Durham was taking in all of this dance and all of this grown folk behavior, and it ends up in a painting. So Dare honored that. If you know Baba Chuck, a powerful dancer. We also have named Max Roach from Newland, North Carolina, up near the Dismal Swamp. Ninth Wonder out of Durham, Joe Thompson, the fiddle player, John Coltrane, Clarence Avant, who's often called the godfather of Black music, out of Greensboro, the Carolina Chocolate Drops, Blind Boy Fuller, Billy Taylor, Lena Mae Perry, Sister Lena Mae Perry with gospel, Rhapsody, hip hop artist, Maestro William Henry Curry, who's head of the symphony, George Clinton, one of the fathers of funk, who was born in Kannapolis. All of these people are from North Carolina or called North Carolina home. Shirley Caesar, Jodeci, and then we have a couple of dancers, Baba Chuck, who I mentioned, as well as Deborah Austin, who was one of the, I think, first Black women to become a prima ballerina in a major ballet company in Texas. And then we were talking about George Clinton. I love this one.
Yes.
Z is for zooming to the future. And this is George Clinton in his mothership. If you've been to the new Smithsonian Museum of African American History and Culture, you've seen on the 4th floor the famous Parliament mothership. And I think I always go and visit it when I get to go. And I think about how funk music was partially born in North Carolina because of people like George Clinton being from Kannapolis, but also Maceo and Melvin Parker, who performed with James Brown. And Nat Jones also, who wrote I Feel Good, wrote the music I Feel Good. And they were out of Kinston. Anyone from Lanier County? I see the mothership. Thank you, Paul, for putting these links in there. I have to give another shout out to Angela Thorpe, the director of the African American Heritage Commission. She is honored here as the teacher in the Rosenwald School. We always say that Angela was born in the wrong time. She's very much a classic 50s beauty. And so Dare honored Angela by making her the teacher in the Rosenwald School. And these are classic Rosenwald School windows. There was like a a methodology of using natural light to try, and a methodology of using space very intelligently. So the cafeteria was also the auditorium and was also the gymnasium. And you would have huge windows to let in natural light so that you wouldn't have to use expensive resources to light a space for learning.
Right. There is
my favorites.
So much. I mean, this book is rich. The fact that, everything you're talking about is it's just a tip of the iceberg.
Yes.
Black history in this state. And I love that about this book. But what I also love is, from that very first A, you are really, you're showing the history, but you're also really highlighting the resistance and the resilience and the power and the hope. Carolina K-12, we talk a lot about how we have to teach a full and comprehensive history. We have to address the hard history of enslavement. We have to address systemic racism, but we also have to show the folks and elevate the voices who resisted through every single period of history. And that is something that I feel like you have done just a tremendous job.
Right. And I would say sometimes people will nervously say to me, aren't they too young, to hear about slavery? So when we talk about L is for longleaf pine, we see the grief on his face and the fatigue. That's an opportunity to talk about the fact that there were Black men who were made to extract out turpentine, tar, and pitch from pine trees. And just like the pine, is weeping and being kind of overly overworked, so too was this man, and they are kind of twin spirits, the enslaved laborer and the pine. It's like they feel each other's pain. And so it's a chance to talk about conservation, our natural environment, our ecosystems, but also human rights abuses in a way that little ones can understand. If you say to a 3-year-old, do you know how sad you feel if someone has something that you want and you're told you can't have it? Or do you know how sad you feel when you're told, no, you cannot do what you want to do? Imagine being told that over and over again every day, just because of who you are. That's not fair. And that's how I talk about, slavery. And the same thing with Sarah Keyes, who fought for freedom, and she was part of the Women's Army Corps, and she refused to be moved off of this bus, and she actually won a court case. All of this is in the companion guide, but we can talk about this person was brave. This person wanted to have freedom. This person understood that if something is not right, we have to speak up. Right. And those are values. So this is also about character development. And this is about implanting, values of equity very young. It's also about modeling humility. We deliberately made this book outside of the realm of the average adult's understanding. We wanted adults to go, I don't know what Black Wall Street is. Let's find out. Let's look it up together. Let's go get the computer. Let's look at this companion guide. Or I don't know Charlotte Hawkins Brown. I don't know why the Dismal Swamp, is listed, which is a space of freedom seeking, underground railroad history right here in North Carolina.
Yes. Heather is saying this is such a clear reminder of how Eurocentric our curriculum in schools has been. These are not folks that we were taught about growing up. Hopefully this is changing. And I think it will change if you look at all the teachers on this event tonight and this beautiful work that you're doing. It has to change, because even from a young age, we need to make sure our children see themselves and that all children see these powerful examples of Black folks doing these incredible things despite overwhelming adversity.
Yes, my comment are on change when it comes to dismantling oppression, dismantling erasure, and dismantling marginalization when it comes to teaching and living, is that change is constant. And change is a daily choice. And I want us to all So if you fell asleep, wake up, because this is the most important thing I want you to hear. I want us to all stop saying, I can't believe we're still dealing with this.
Mm.
We don't say, I can't believe I still have to pay my light bill. You know, we don't say, I can't believe, you know, I have to, you know, paint the house again. Anti-oppression work is about maintenance. It is not about a singular large effort. It's about fundamental, the fundamental change that has to come has to be in a collective of us that grows larger and larger, intentionally committing to a daily practice of equity and inclusion.
Yes.
And I think of it like a garden. I made a garden this summer for the first time, and I know a lot of people did. I decided to try my hand at tomatoes and cucumbers and flowers, and it was beautiful. But like any gardener and farmer knows, you have to tend it. You have to tend it. So I call it tending the garden.
Yes.
Let's stop saying, I can't believe we still have to deal with this. It's a human need to tend the garden of justice.
Yes, I love that. I love that. And I think that's so helpful for teachers, because I know teachers come to us all the time and they feel overwhelmed. You know, how do I completely transition my entire curriculum? Or they feel, especially our middle and high school teachers, even elementary school teachers, they're worried about teaching, you know, about enslavement or things that might be hard. And so I think what you're talking about is such a powerful reminder, just to take the steps, you know, do it one step at a time and tend that garden. I think that's a beautiful way to look at it.
And trust your gut. The WP, for those of you who teach older students, no, the WPA slave narrative should not just be handed out in class. The language is too hard in terms of, you know, using language like the N-word, you know, that appears in the WPA slave. It should not be just handed out. Your historic sites that I am blessed to steward are great resources for helping you all to understand history of, you know, human bondage, history of human oppression, history of wars. We have sites all across the state. And even if you can't get there physically, we have virtual programming that's there for you. We have social media accounts at places like Stagville and Somerset, the state capitol, Vance birthplace, that are doing really profound things. With ACOC birthplace, we recently showed Wilmington on Fire to really take a clear-eyed look at how Governor ACOC was a part of the white supremacist campaign that, you know, that dismantled legally elected officials in Wilmington. And so in Wilmington, 1898. So for your older students and for your own knowledge, please know that the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, that we're here as a resource. And you get stronger telling these stories the more you practice.
Yes.
And so, and the more you kind of listen to someone do it, oh, that's how you do it. Okay, I can do this. Let me try. And I have been able to talk to people from all walks of life, all political backgrounds, all ethnicities. I can talk to someone who is in a Confederate uniform and is a reenactor, and I can say to them, what inspires you to do this? And I can listen. And then I can say, may I tell you about what inspires me to think about the Civil War? And I can talk about freedom. And I can talk about, you know, the human experiences that I'm interested in connecting with through my ancestry and through the ancestors of others whose stories haven't been told, like the Lumbee. You know, we've been working really hard to bring the story of the Lumbee into Fort Fisher in particular.
Battle of Hayes Pond is one of my favorite North Carolina stories ever.
It's powerful. And you know, with our 8 state recognized tribes, we're working with the Lumbee at Fort Fisher. We're working with the Halawasaponi at Historic Halifax. We're working with Cherokee at Fort Dobbs. We're working with all tribes. And so these are also stories. So just even though I'm really passionate about African American history, I also have a deep commitment to thinking about who else is not being included and how to bring them into our connectedness and our expression and our sense of who we are as a people.
Right, right. Well, you are getting so much love. Daphne says, well, anti-oppression work. This is powerful gems of wisdom that you are dropping during this discussion. Thank you. Toya, North Carolina history is essential. Black history is American history. And I think that's so important. This should be woven throughout. This is not a book to use in the month of just February. This is
Amen.
American history. And
yes.
You've given us a beautiful tool to do that with. I would love to have you talk about I is for ice cream.
Sure, I'd be happy to.
I've heard you talk about it a little bit. And what I love so much about this is it obviously represents the sit-in movement, but I'm guessing that this is actually geared towards the Royal Ice Cream Parlor, perhaps, of 1957, rather than the more familiar Greensboro movement of 1960. Will you talk a little bit?
Sure. So I just want you all to take in, first of all, yes, curves, body.
Representation.
Yes. But so we were really, it was important for us to show African-American bodies and hair and skin in all varieties. And we wanted to make that something to be excited about and proud of. And we wanted to show young people enjoying the fruits of their labor. So if you can imagine people who sat in Charlotte, people who sat in Durham, people who sat in Raleigh. So Charlotte, Raleigh, all of these cities had sit-ins. There were sit-ins all over the country, certainly, and all over North Carolina, in addition to February 1st, 1960 in Greensboro. And we have to give a shout out to the Bennett Bells who helped to strategize that moment. It was not just about four young, amazing men who they were. It was also about those Bennett Bells and strategizing. But Ice for Ice Cream is about, yes, the Royal Ice Cream sit-in, but it's about all of those sit-ins that happened at ice cream counters and Woolworths and delicatessens all across North Carolina. It's honoring the spirit of youthfulness. It's honoring, what did young people want to do at an ice cream counter? They wanted to flirt and they wanted to party and they wanted to feel free. And so we are honoring the dream of what inspired the protest.
Love it.
And also trying to create, what do we think it looked like after they won, their efforts.
That's amazing. Another thing I really love too, that's kind of subtle, but Q, specifically where you have Q is for questions.
Yes.
I feel like that's so important for all teachers to cultivate curiosity and to tell our students to question everything. Don't just take what's on social media as fact or what's in the news as fact. You have to ask questions and critical.
Yes. So Q is for quiet and quilts and questions. And so this is a way that we knew that everything that we included wasn't going to be about a specific historical moment. Like Y is for you. It's for you. And D is for the Dismal Swamp. It is about history. It's also about place. But Q, being for quiet and quilt and questions, honors home. Particularly in this era of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. I'm particularly thinking about Breonna Taylor. I think that we keep hearing these stories about Black people not being safe in their own homes. And this is a way to honor the sanctity of Black home space and family and whatever family looks like in every kind of, way that family can be. And so honoring, that love, the love of that can happen inside those walls, and quilts representing kind of multi-generational love. And then questions, that's a time when you're home to ask, why is this happening? What's going on? What are they shouting about? Or what's happening? Or why do we have to wear masks? There's a time that, Little ones just need to be able to ask questions, and that's good.
Right. Yes, I love that. So I want to turn to some talk, since we're with so many teachers here. We have lots of questions about teaching. I do want to let everybody know that all of the resources Paul's been popping into chat, you're going to get an email this evening with all of those resources, with the sites that Michelle has mentioned. There are lesson plans for elementary, middle, and high school. A+ Schools, which is a program of the North Carolina Arts Council in partnership with the North Carolina African American Heritage Commission, has created elementary school plans that coordinate with each page of the book, each letter of the book. They're sensational, and they're going to be officially launched on the Commission's webpage next week, but you guys are going to get a sneak peek. We're going to give you a Google folder of those. Angela at the African American Heritage Commission kindly made those available for you guys. Carolina K-12 also has lots of lesson plans in our database that connects to some of these topics that Paul's been dropping there. But Michelle, there's so many great questions. For instance, Susanna is asking for ideas, and I think you've been talking a lot about this. She wants to use this beautiful book as a way to talk to students about being anti-racist. And also Rosie in Ashboro is asking for specific ways to maybe use this book as a way to bring in more culturally responsive content into my lessons. So to specifically use this book kind of as a piece to really teach, to celebrate and elevate the history, but to also explicitly teach anti-racism.
Yeah, so I think that we can use the examples of Sarah Keyes, we can use the examples of the sit-in activists, Polly Murray, even Anna Julia Cooper, and say, how, you can pull out, spend some time with the content and pull out everyone in here who is a freedom fighter or a human rights advocate and champion, and then maybe spend time with each letter, thinking about how each one of them fought for people who have been oppressed in some way. What are the values that they espoused? What were some of the challenges they faced? You can really dig deep in a lot of these, with a lot of these individuals. Polly Murray has written many, many books. Proud Shoes is an amazing book. So I would encourage you to go through and just pull together kind of a freedom theme or freedom fighting theme. I know that someone else asked, how can you think about activism as a literacy tool? So you'll notice you can actually look at, and this might take a little extra research, when are we starting to see legislation that makes it illegal for enslaved people to read? Well, it's right around the same time that there are uprisings and people who are fleeing slavery. So you can tie together Underground Railroad activity, the Dismal Swamp, U.S. color troops wanting to read, Abraham Galloway being a legislator who's fighting for people to have early education with the early rise of freedom right after the Civil War, Anna Julia Cooper being at St. Aug and the HBCU. So you can connect how literacy is a tool for freedom, because the more people can connect to their own sources of knowledge, the more they can have an internal sense of empowerment, self-determination, be able to defend, themselves. We understand how important literacy is even for the right to vote.
Yes. Lois is wondering, I think this is a great question. Has your book been used in school systems so far? This book needs to be in every school system across the state. Is that happening?
Thank you. I would say that there is this kind of slow growth. Working with you all is, I think, our first really formal, maybe first or second formal introduction to working with teachers. We've worked with librarians. I think we started with librarians, though the state library was super excited about the book. And you all, I'm so honored. The state library ordered enough to make sure that every library in the state has one, and that there are books also available for Braille as well as audio description, so that people, who are visually impaired can also enjoy the book. So libraries were our first kind of push. And I think now we're starting to see teachers take it on. So in many ways, you all are, I would say, the first layer of teachers who are thinking critically about how to use the book, particularly since the lesson plans are just about to be launched. You all are getting the sneak peek of the lesson plans that were just finished. And then I think they're going to formally launch them in February. So you all really are the first wave.
You're behind the velvet rope, folks. And again, we're so appreciative of the North Caroliniana Society and the Braitmayer Foundation to get everybody joining us tonight a copy of this. And I think it'll really spread from there. I love this question. I know we're running out of time here, but I love this question from Emily from Durham. She says she teaches K-5 theater arts, and she's interested to know, which A through Z entries would you recommend to expand into a short dramatic work in my class? I think that's such a fun question.
It is. So I know there's been plays about, there's a play already out about Pauli Murray. Just thinking through, and there's actually a play about Nina Simone as well.
That's a great idea to maybe get some of those as examples. You know, I was even thinking, even for older kids, to do this with 5th grade, middle school, even high school, have them make their own book.
Right.
Different folks.
Yeah, I think Jay would be an interesting theatrical piece, because what you're seeing is an inside look into a young person's bedroom. It's kind of based on my daughter's bedroom circa age 11. And it says, you know, J is for Michael Jordan and Harriet Jacobs and John Chavis. And so you could create a little mini play about, you know, what would it be like to be, maybe this young person has been told, until you clean your room, you can't come out, and you have to do a report or something. I don't know. And then maybe they're exploring these people who are around them on their walls. There is a really great book that the John Hope Franklin young scholars created called Running for Hope. I'm proud to say my daughter is one of the authors of that book, Running for Hope. And that it would be a great resource as well, to look at how can you create a world or a portal into history through the mind of young people.
Yeah. So there are 2 great questions here that I think is a pretty good closing question, because we're almost out of time. Sadly, I feel like I could just keep talking to you for hours more. But both Nikita and Paris are kind of asking the same question, which is, North Carolina is so rich with history like this. Do you see a second edition of A to Z in the future? Where, you know, what's next for this project overall?
Yeah. Yes, I would have to say I'm really content with what we've done with the project. There's been opportunities to show some of the paintings that Dare has done. More and more people are learning about it and buying it, you know, to have the curriculum that's coming out, the companion guide, opportunities to speak about it. I'm really pleased with where this book is. And my number one goal for this book is that it would feel like an invitation, that people would have that desire to go, I need more, I need more. But I also recognize I don't have to be comprehensive, because what I want you all to understand is that you will never know all of it. Right. And if you can pass that on to your students, is that keep looking for more stories to add to this list. Maybe they could create their own alphabet. I would love to receive through Christy, if you all wanted to share, you know, students who said, okay, we're going to make our own alphabet of African-American history. I would love to see, because, you know, I didn't get to put Stagville in there, you know, S3 for Stagville and Somerset. I didn't get to put J is for John Canoe. So I didn't get to put G is for Gullah culture in the southeastern part of the state. So, but it's not for me to create all the alphabets. Let me leave some space for other people to do that, and continue to invite you all. Visit our, you know, historic sites. Go to our HBCUs. Do your own research. Go on your own journeys to our state parks and our cultural heritage tours. Have your own explorations of these landscapes and these buildings and these stories and these cultural institutions and these museums. that's what my goal is. It's for me not to be the author of the, entire encyclopedia of all that could be done, but to invite you all to join me in calling out these stories and amplifying these stories.
I love it. We accept your invitation. It's a beautiful invitation. So Michelle Lanier, thank you so much. Like I said, I could just talk to you for hours. You know so much. You're such a joy. You are a gift to this state and nation. We're so appreciative of you to take the time to talk to us tonight. And as I said, you're North Carolina royalty, and you're just absolutely a pleasure. So what I want to do right now, I want to give Michelle some time to read through the chat and see some of the lovely things that you guys have said. And if you have any last questions you want to ask, we'll keep the webinar live for a few more minutes. And also Paul is going to put in a link there that you can fill out to get your free copy of the book. Before we go, I do want to again acknowledge our partners, the partners and sponsors for tonight: the North Carolina Museum of History, the African American Heritage Commission, and the North Caroliniana Society. Again, it's the North Caroliniana Society and the Braitmayer Foundation who are funding copies of these books for every pre-K and elementary school teacher with us this evening. It's lovely when folks say they appreciate teachers, and even more so when they do something about it. So a million thanks to them. Dr. Jim Clark, the president of the North Caroliniana Society, was with us tonight, and he just appreciates you all so much as well. Again, a million thanks to you amazing teachers. 2020 has been a year like no other. I think we can all say that. Please hang in there, hang on. We appreciate you. We see you. We value you so very much. We're here for whatever you need. Visit us at Carolina K-12. Let us know what we can do for you. And as I said, I'm going to leave the webinar open here at the end for a few minutes. We'll turn our cameras off, but hang out in the chat box if you want to chat for a little bit. You can copy down those links, get the link from Paul to fill out. Go ahead and get that done to get your book. And while we sign off, I'm going to have Paul play us out with Sweet Honey in the Rock, specifically their song for page E, the phenomenal Ella Baker. Paul's going to put on Sweet Honey in the Rock's Ella's song that you guys can listen to while you go back through your chat. So thank you all. Have a great evening. Happy holiday. And again, Michelle Lanier, thank you for being here for this beautiful, beautiful book. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Christy. And I would love to get the information for the North Caroliniana Society so I can thank them as well. And thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. Please stay healthy and safe, and just know that we so appreciate everything you do for our children.
Yes. Oh, Michelle, when you were listing off all of those social medias, we have several people asking, do you have a Twitter? You've got some fans that want to start following you.
I don't. I'm social media shy. I try to always promote my historic sites. So please do check out our 25 historic sites. They are my heroes and sheroes. You talked about heroes and sheroes. I mean, the people who are memory keepers of our state in the middle of a pandemic, I think they're right up there with our teachers. They're standing right next to you all. So yeah, please follow our sites. They are amazing.
Yeah, great. All right. Thank you, guys. I'm going to video off here. And again, we'll keep the chat open for 3 or 4 minutes here, as you can sign off and say goodnight. Again, thank you all. Good night.
Thank you.
Even freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Until the killing of black men, black mothers' sons, is as important as the killing of white men, white mothers' sons.